Hi everyone, DJ here. Welcome back to the show. I've said it before and I'll say it again. One of the worst parts of Big World Big Adventures is how much they neglected the European railways and engines in the international episodes of those seasons. We had so many countries and engines to choose from Germany, France, Russia, etc. And yet only one, that being Italy, got featured in a bunch of episodes that were, let's just say, not very good. It really sucks too because many of these railways and locomotives are insanely unique and interesting. Which brings me to the subject of today's video, Axel, the Belgian competitor in the Great Race during the Great Railway Show. Axel is definitely one of my more suggested characters for this series, and seeing as how I'm trying to fully complete the Great Race new character roster, he seemed like the obvious choice for this episode. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Axel is a streamlined, mid-sized tender engine, painted in the livery of the Belgian flag, who works for the National Railway Company of Belgium in, you guessed it, Belgium. He is described by the official website as a smooth, streamlined tender engine, built for speed. His good looks and style have made him very popular with fans of steam. Effortlessly cool, he'll be sure to win over more fans at the Great Railway Show. His first appearance was in the 2016 Thomas & Friends film The Great Race, where he led the charge of engines heading to the Great Railway Show off the rail ferry at Brendam Docks when the ship docked there accidentally. It was him who was approached by the dock manager, who asked Axel where they were all going. Axel replied, "To the Great Railway Show, of course." And after the dock manager explained the mistake of destination, Axel yelled, "Wrong stop," and everyone got back on the ship bound for the mainland. Once at the Great Railway Show, Axel could be seen being admired by curious onlookers while sitting on a turntable, and later he was seen competing in the Great Race Challenge with Etienne, Flying Scotsman, Spencer, and Shooting Star, formerly known as Gordon. Interestingly, Axel actually spent most of the race in last place, trailing behind Flying Scotsman. However, when Scotsman slowed down to check on Shooting Star's boiler explosion, Axel overtook him and ended up coming in third. Once the Great Railway Show had finished, Axel returned to Belgium, and he appeared two more times in two Great Race Friends Near and Far shorts. He cameoed in Gina the Smart Steam Engine, and he featured prominently alongside Etienne in Axel Goes to the Mountains. In this short, Axel becomes frustrated with Etienne's boasting while traveling home through France, and when they reach a group of passengers who need to be taken home through a mountain track without electrical wires, Axel jumps at the opportunity, happy to be away from Etienne. Axel soon realizes the company he was missing out on without Etienne, and thus when the job's done, he returns to push Etienne through the route. And much like many other characters from the Great Race, Axel fell off the face of the earth and was never seen again. Quite a shame, really, as the frame for an interesting character is there, but we will talk about that later. Right now, I want to get into some history and talk about his basis. Apologies in advance for any words in German, French, or Dutch I mispronounce. Your patience is very much appreciated. Axel is based on an NMBS/SNCB Type 12 locomotive designed by Roel Notes and built by the Société Anonyme John Cockerell Company at Sierang near Liège, Belgium. The locomotives were 442 designs, burned coal, and had rather impressive performance figures, having a top speed of 165 kilometers an hour and a power output of 2,500 horsepower. 6 of these locomotives were built between 1938 and 1939, numbered 12001 to 12006. They were, of course, completely streamlined, with the exception of openings so that crews could access their valve gear and crankshaft. Interestingly as well, the engines had inside cylinders, but outside valve gear to handle oscillations at high speed. The class was designed to handle fast, lightweight boat trains on a 124-kilometer route between Brussels and Ostend, where they needed to be capable of speeds between 120 kilometers an hour and 140 kilometers per hour, which they accomplished quite well, evidenced by a record run on June the 12th, 1939, where the locomotive completed its run between Brussels and Ostend in 57 minutes, clocking in at 165 kilometers an hour. The locomotives also saw service on the Lotsen, Hurth-Bessal, and Lille lines during World War II, and for the majority of their working lives, locomotives worked near Schaerbeek, near Brussels. The locomotives ended their working lives on the Brussels-Mons and Brussels-Tournai trains, with final withdrawals happening on the 27th of September 1962. All of the engines were subsequently scrapped except for one. 12004 was spared the cutter's torch, preserved by the SNCB, and was steamed again for the 150th anniversary of railway presence in Belgium in 1985. Rather unfortunately, after that, the engine was left outside exposed to the elements. However, it was eventually brought home in September of 2015 to the Train World Railway Museum at Schaerbeek. Once again, we find a relatively easy headcanon to construct, as Axel is directly based on the preserved 12004, so we can just say that in the Thomas universe, he is either a museum engine or a Type 12 that was simply never withdrawn. Before we move on, though, I do want to mention one incident involving the class during the Second World War, where locomotive 12002 was involved in Belgian railwaymen and resistance fighters' efforts to stall a German prison train from getting back to Germany and escaping the advancing Allied armies. Locomotive 12002 was commandeered by the Germans to pull the prison train, but thanks to the efforts of the crew on the engine and several other engines, and other saboteurs on other parts of the line, the train was cancelled and the prisoners set free. This event gained the locomotive the nickname Die Spooktrain. Now, the story does have way more details and parts than that, but I don't have time to go over it in detail. If you are interested, though, I highly recommend Train of Thought's video on the subject. All in all, though, a very interesting history for Axel of Belgium. Okay, this is going to be a pretty quick segment because my complaints about Axel are complaints I have had with many of the characters in this series, and that complaint is that he is underutilized and should have been used more. Have him spend more time on Sodor in the Great Race movie, and, I don't know, maybe have him come back and do a rematch with Gordon and Spencer or something. I really don't have that much else to say, though, so with that, let's move on to Collection Corner. Okay, so here we have the 2016 Take and Play Axel, which, yeah, is kind of a middle-of-the-road model. Don't get me wrong, he has a lot of really great detailing, and the paint scheme is spot on. However, there are a few issues that hold this back from being a truly great model for me. First of all, his tender is backwards, which is kind of weird, but, like, not a world-ending issue. And just a little bit of trivia, he has buffers on his aft side above his magnet, actually. And finally, he just looks so freaking squashed. Like, this really does not reflect his elegant shape seen in the show. Definitely could have been better. I'm giving this model a 6 out of 10. Well, that concludes this episode of Thomas Characters Explained. I hope you guys enjoyed. I had a lot of fun making this one, and if you want to see any other characters in this series, please let me know. As I said, I'm trying to cover all of the international engines from the Great Race and then move on to other characters, so look forward to seeing more engines like Axel. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys!